cases are spiking again as we speak. New York can't seem to get a grip on it, even though we're telling everybody to stay indoors. How about the fact that not every teacher wants to get vaccinated? What are we going to do then? Homeschool for the rest of our lives? That story she just told you was a lie. None of it even happened. She went on to her Instagram account to go live to tens of millions of people across the country to straight up tell you all a story that didn't even exist. If I want to own a damn rocket launcher to overtake the tyrant government, that's my business. If I want to own a bazooka because I feel that the government is out of control and we now need to go up against them, that is my right. It is not their right to tell me what weapon I'm going to use. God forbid this country gets to that point. Remember, the Second Amendment right gives us the right to bear arms, to defend ourselves, and overtake a tyrant government. And if I want to use a tank to do that, that is nobody's business but my own. If there was really an insurrection, let's think about this for a second. If an insurrection really occurred, where a group of extremists try to overtake the government or try to disrupt their active business that day, try to overturn an election, do you really think a single Republican or any politician for that matter would back Trump? Here is where I will defend the situation. Before you call me a monster and an animal for defending the situation, I will say this. The cop was following the procedure.
Never said I oppose fracking. Show the tape. Put it on your website. Put it on the website.
Live from Clark Studios in Rochester, New York. Broadcasting around the world. You're listening to You Made It Political, where the voice of the keyboard warrior is finally heard and the arguments presented are put to the political test. And now, here's your host, Matt Clark.
We all know that the teachers' unions in the United States of America are the biggest threat to this country. They literally dictate our lives. They control every aspect of it, including our children's, and now they are writing the CDC guidelines. They are more powerful than the Biden administration and our entire federal government. This reminds me a little bit of like the 1950s mafia. Nobody could stop to them. We know they took out John F. Kennedy. We know they controlled America and the government and every aspect of their lives back in the day. The teachers' unions is today's mafia, and they will not stop unless we push back. But lately, it's getting worse. We've tried to fight. Our board of election members have, quote unquote, tried to fight. Teachers have even tried to fight. The parents stand no chance whatsoever because every single time we go up against this draconian dictatorship, we get shut down and our kids are getting crucified and are suffering along the way. But this weekend, when I read the news that the CDC is now taking orders and suggestions and guidance from the teachers' unions, that's why I absolutely lost my freaking mind. And it's no wonder that mainstream media has too had enough and is now putting their foot down and making the rest of the country know just how out of control these people, this group, this mob really is. And we have to put a stop to it. Today, we're going to start our show over at Facebook on Fox News' social media page, where we discuss the problem that the Biden administration has right now and is literally taking dictation from the teachers' unions, as Democrats have long done. Let's head over to Fox News, and we'll take a look at that post as we start today's show. So, as I just said, for those of you who are joining me a little bit late, the teachers' unions is the new mafia. They control every aspect of our lives. There's no doubt about it. Parents don't stand a chance. We have no say. The Biden administration has no say. And guess what? Now the CDC even has no say. It is getting out of control. And I don't know how much more we're going to be able to take it. We've tried to fight back. We've done everything we could. They keep introducing these heinous and draconian measures into our children's lives. And they're getting away with it. They continue to get away with it, no matter how hard we fight. So Fox reported the problem is that the Biden administration is taking direction from the teachers' unions, as Democrats have long done. That is the problem here. They are now, or they're not following the science. We know the teachers' unions haven't been following the science since day one. It's clear as day. I've been screaming about this from the very first week that they lock down their schools and send kids home for remote learning. And now it's just gotten 10 times worse. At least the rest of the country is now on board. At least I'm not the only one who despises the teachers' unions at this point. I think it's safe to say that 75% of the country wants this union gone, abolished, dismantled. So they're not following the science. They're following orders from labor leaders that give a lot of money to Democratic politicians and Democratic leaders. So the biggest problem that we have now, people, is that our own government's not even in control anymore. They lost control. They've given up control to the teachers' unions. We all knew originally it was in exchange for votes. Okay, I get it. This is how lobbyists work. This is how politics work. We kind of bend over for the highest bidder. We sell out. Politicians whore themselves out for donations. That's the name of the game. Trump at least took more personal donations rather than corporate donations and donations from lobbyists. Hence the reason he didn't have to bend over to this insanity. He didn't have to take it in the rear end from groups like the teachers' unions. But Biden, he needs it. He needs that money. He got that money. He now owes them his soul. But we didn't sign up for this. This was not a package deal. Biden may have bent over, but why do the parents have to bend over? And now the CDC is even bending over. So the CDC is now taking directions from the teachers' unions. This is how corrupt and out of control it's gotten. And it just shows how much power these teacher unions have. And this is where I absolutely lost my freaking mind. They are not following the science. They've never been following the science. Okay, we all know that the kids, as far as risk is concerned for this entire pandemic, is as low as it can get. I mean, the kids aren't passing it to each other. The kids aren't even passing it to the teachers. I mean, it's all been corruption from day one. They've used this pandemic to get money. It's all been about money and greed. It's been to fit their agenda. They've now hijacked the Biden administration and the CDC. So it's no wonder that finally these unions are being exposed for the corrupt organization that they really are. They don't care about our kids. They never cared about our kids. The only thing the teachers' unions care about is money. I don't even think they give a shit about the teachers, to be honest. And if they did, these kids would have been back in school 8-10 months ago, as soon as they started following the science. But they ignore the science because they want money. Even after the Chicago Teachers Union gave them, after the Chicago the city of Chicago gave the Chicago Teachers Union $100 million, either in the beginning of this year or last year. I can't remember what it was. That still wasn't enough for them. They screwed the city of Chicago, and they wanted more money even after they rinsed them of $100 million. So this whole thing has never been about the kids. It's been about corruption, greed. It's all about the teachers' unions and their rise to power. Let's head over to an article and watch a quick video on the fact that the White House is now defending the CDC outreach to the teachers' unions. This is how bad it's getting. They are actually defending the teachers' unions, giving guidance to the CDC. Let's take a look.
Welcome to the Journal Editorial Report. I'm Paul Gigot. New fallout this week from the close collaboration between the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the nation's second largest teachers union in drafting the agency's school reopening guidelines. Emails first obtained by the New York Post show that the American Federation of Teachers reviewed a draft of the CDC document and made recommendations that union officials said would strengthen it. The CDC adopted two of the union's suggestions, nearly verbatim. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki defended the AFT's input at a briefing, saying it was not out of the ordinary.
It's actually long-standing best practice for the CDC to engage with organizations and groups that are going to be impacted by guidance and recommendations issued by the agency. It doesn't mean they are taking everything they want or even a percentage of what they want.
Let's bring in our panel. Wall Street Journal columnist and deputy editorial page editor Dan Henninger, columnist Kim Strassel, and columnist and Manhattan Institute senior fellow Jason Riley. So, Jason, you heard Jen Psaki say business as usual, nothing really to see here. You agree with that?
Well, the problem is that it is business as usual. The problem is that the Biden administration is taking dictation from the teachers' unions, as Democrats have long done, Paul, and that is the problem here. They're not following the science orders from labor leaders that give a lot of money to Democratic politicians and Democratic causes, and then the teachers' unions are right up there. So that's the problem here, and it also shows again that the teachers' unions have not been acting in the best interest of the children. I mean, look, we all know that labor unions exist to protect workers, whether you're talking about auto workers or prison guards or what have you. The difference here is that teachers' unions have long pretended that their interests are perfectly aligned with those of the children. And I think their behavior during this pandemic, their resistance to go back to work, and the harm we know it has caused children mentally, physically, in terms of the learning gap and so forth, and the misery it's caused families, all so that they could use this as leverage for better pay and benefits, shows that their interests are not aligned with those of the children and families.
Yeah.
So obviously, I mean, we know where this is going. And everyone's question is, why are teachers reviewing the CDC guidelines? What the hell do these people know about the science that I don't know? I mean, if you're going to be asking these teachers who know nothing about the science, ask me. I'll tell you. I'll show you the CDC data. I probably have more to say than any of these teachers because I've been following this daily, every single day, combing through the data, trying to understand why America is so freaking stupid and why we can't just get on with our lives. The teachers have not been doing this. Remember, they're the ones who are suffering and struggling because they have to remote teach and take care of their kids. Yeah, well, duh, like the rest of us, guys. You're not the only one struggling here. So they claim they can't even keep up with their 29-hour day. There's no way they're combing through the data. There's no way they have any idea what the science says or what it means. Yet they just want to dictate to the Biden administration so they can get more money, whether it's for teachers, their schools, whether it's hundreds of millions of dollars for ventilation systems that they do not need, or upgrades that are long overdue. That should be coming out of the local taxes, by the way, not this stimulus package or at the sacrifice of our kids staying home, using them as leverage to get even more money. So the system is corrupt beyond belief. And this is not, Jen Psaki just said, well, this is business as usual. You know, they should have, of course they're going to want to know what's going on when it comes to their school districts. No, they don't need to know, okay? They just need to get back to class and teach the kids and get paid and go home. That's it. They don't need to know. All they need to know is, are they at risk? Yes or no. That's all they need to know. That's it. It's very simple. Am I at risk? No, you're not. The CDC said you're not. We reduced it down to 3 feet. You have a better chance of freaking getting hit by lightning 5 times on the way home than you do catching this fake flu. Okay, and get back to school. That's it. We don't need them. They are literally rewriting guidelines right now for the CDC. So the CDC sent over the new guidelines to the teachers' unions to take a look, because apparently the teachers' unions are now the CDC's boss. So the CDC took a look and we don't like that. We don't like that. They gave back their suggestions, which we all know is bullshit. And the CDC revised those verbatim, like word for word. They said, okay, we'll put that in. It probably had to do with the freaking masks and, I'm guessing, some stupid policies about vaccine, which we all know is coming and will be our next fight. So Jen Psaki goes on to say this is business as usual. It's not business as usual. The Biden administration taking dictation from the teachers' unions is not business as usual. This is mafia as usual. Just like we saw back in the JFK days, the 1950s, the 1960s, when the mafia ran America. The teachers' union is now running America. The mafia was cancer. We had to cut it out to save America. The teachers' unions are America's cancer, and we need to cut them out or they're going to kill this country. Straight up, they're going to kill the country. The teachers' unions' interests are not aligned with the children, they go out to say. Let's listen to a little bit more of the video of how we are failing our students and how we are now being held hostage to the teachers' union, or the CDC is now being held hostage to the teachers' unions. Let's take a listen.
Dan, though, I understand business as usual when you're talking about a collective bargaining between the union and politicians. This is the CDC. It's supposed to be focused on the science, and yet it was they were able to change the advice that the CDC gave. It strikes me as extraordinary.
And unacceptable, Paul. Can you imagine if back in 2020, Kayleigh McEnany, Donald Trump's press secretary, had been in a situation like this involving private companies or pharmaceutical companies and said it was best practices? I mean, the White House reporters would have mocked her off the stage. Of course, that doesn't happen with the Biden administration. The story here is the closeness between the Democratic Party and the teachers union and the teachers union's contributions. Back when they were negotiating the rescue plan earlier this year, teachers union contributions to Democratic lawmakers in Congress spiked way above what they were in 2019 and 2020. And in fact, the rescue plan appropriated $130 billion for the schools. I would call that ransomware, Paul. They went on strike. They were not teaching in the schools. They get $100 billion out of Congress to reopen the schools, which they still aren't reopening. This is completely unacceptable. This is like hackers stealing data from schools and saying they won't give the data back unless you give them money.
Kim, what's the...
So obviously this is a ransom attack, just like they've just reported $130 billion. $130 billion out of Congress. The teachers' unions have already gotten, and they're still not back to school. What are they waiting for? What exactly are they holding out for? And nobody seems to be going up against them. Why? Why are the parents so scared to go up against the teachers' unions, to put their foot down? And I feel bad for these teachers because they're about to have the worst next year of their lives. If you don't think the parents are going to come back and take it out on these teachers, then they have another thing coming, because their life is going to be a living hell. I don't even know why you'd want to be a teacher anymore, to be honest, because of the backlash that they're about to get when these parents come back to school, because they've put these children through hell. They put the parents through hell, all for a virus with a 99.7% rate, survival rate. So it makes no sense at all. And it's now clear that the teachers' unions are not doing this for the kids. They're doing it for their own gain and their own benefit. And we've seen it and we've known it. But now that they're dictating the CDC guidance and the guidelines, is really probably going to be the last straw for everybody, because we know now how corrupt they are. We know they do not care about the kids. Let's head over to the Keyboard Warrior Cam and see what the American people have to say about the insanity over the fact that the teachers' unions are now writing the CDC guidelines. Remember, the teachers' unions have no clue what the hell. They probably don't even know what the CDC does or what it even means, to be honest. I really wouldn't be surprised. I would put them kind of in that level of uneducated when it comes to this pandemic. So Carol says, because Dem aid given to teachers unions flows through back to support Dems during election time. That's the deal. That's exactly what's going on. It's going to the teachers' unions, going right back to the Democrats. It's basically a big money laundering scheme. It's just a huge scheme. And we all know why they're doing it, and the gig's up. So the only way to do it is just get rid of the Democrats. Get rid of Biden, get rid of the Democrats, get rid of anybody who buys into this bullshit. And then finally, we can return to normal. We can get these kids back to normal. Trump would have never stood for this. Brett wrote, stop voting for communism, and then their leaders won't have any power. I mean, that's exactly the deal. This didn't happen. This is why they wanted Trump gone so bad. They could not push this agenda with Trump in place. They couldn't push their critical race theory garbage, which we'll get into in just a minute, with Trump in place. It would have been slammed down. The doors would have been slammed shut, and they would have had absolutely no power whatsoever to get this done. Andrew says teachers' unions have absolutely destroyed the education system in this country, brainwashed many of these wonderful teachers, and put the children second. They need to be dealt with. They do. They have brainwashed these teachers. I have family who I don't talk to anymore because, I mean, clearly they don't like what I have to say about their precious unions or the teachers themselves. They've been brainwashed. If you ask a teacher to really kind of explain why they agree with the actions that the teachers' unions are taking, they give you the same sort of answer as to why they voted for Biden. They don't really have one. They don't have a good answer. They have no idea why they voted for Biden. They know why they voted against Trump, but they don't really know why they voted for Biden. It's kind of the same answer that I get when I'm like, do you agree with what the teachers' unions are doing to these children? Well, and this is their answer all the time. Well, I support my teachers' union. Okay, that wasn't my question. My question was, do you agree what they're doing to these children? Well, my teachers' union defends me and I appreciate everything they do. Okay, conversation goes nowhere. Again, it's the same. Can you name one policy that you agree with that and why you voted for Joe Biden? Naming one policy, one Joe Biden policy that you agree with. They can't. It's the same thing. They can't give you any valid answers when you ask them if they agree with what the teachers' unions are doing to these kids. Do you think or agree with the teachers' unions and their following of the science? They can't give you an answer because we know they're not following the science. So they just kind of stare at you like a deer in headlights, just with this blank face. They have no freaking idea what they're talking about. Lori says, maybe if parents homeschool or homeschool and daycare settings, the teachers will be out of a job. At least you would know their little brains are not being brainwashed by the current nonsense. To be honest, a lot of teachers are actually losing their jobs, and they're not all bad. They're not, all these teachers aren't bad. There's a lot of good teachers out there, but they are losing their jobs because the states are losing funding. So many parents have pulled their kids out of homeschool because of this insanity. They pulled their kids out of the school. They're now homeschooling their kids. And when you do this and the numbers decline, you actually get less state funding. Our taxes only go so far. They don't pay for everything. The districts then need to go to the state for funding. And when they can't get that funding because there's such a decline in attendance, this is why the parents have been the teachers have been freaking, little attendance dictators, is because when the parents don't register their kids every day, the attendance record drops rapidly and they have to report that to the state. The state then withdraws funding or doesn't give them as much funding. So yes, homeschooling will definitely hurt the districts. It'll definitely hurt the teachers. And that really is the answer. Stop paying your taxes. Homeschool your kids. Maybe that's the lesson we need to give to the teachers' unions. Maybe that's the lesson they need in order to get back to work. Or maybe the unions need that lesson. Maybe the teachers want to get back to work. This show is about the teachers' unions and their mafia mentality and their stranglehold on America today. The same stranglehold that the mafia had on us in the 1950s that got rid of JFK, that nearly destroyed America before we cut the cancer out. Today, the teachers' unions are America's cancer. They are America's mafia. And you can be pissed off at me all you want for calling them out. But they control our lives right now. And they control our children's lives. And until we get rid of them, I don't see this madness ending. And even if it does end for a short period of time, what's going to happen the next pandemic or the one after that? We're going to keep letting the teachers' unions control our lives? And what's really disturbing me about this whole thing is that we let them. Where are the parents? Where's the anger? Why aren't we fighting back? Why aren't we going up against them? We're starting to see it in Arizona when they stormed the Board of Education meeting. We're starting to see it in Colorado or Utah just last week. They went to the meeting. They weren't even allowed to speak, these parents. They asked to speak, and the Board of Education member, the president, or whoever it was, said, "We're done with speaking." And the teacher's like, "We're not done with speaking." And they started screaming and shouting at them because that's what it's going to take to get the job done. We actually need to show up by the hundreds now. We need to show up to the school campuses by the hundreds and let them know we've had enough. There needs to be some sort of protest, or this is never going to end. Dewey says Republicans' actions are to create a situation where Americans are underfed, underpaid, underinsured, undereducated, uninformed, unsafe, unable to vote, overpopulated, overarmed, and overly paranoid. The question is why? So this liberal dumbass, Dewey, clearly doesn't understand who's at fault here. He thinks this is the Republicans' fault, even though the Republicans are the ones who want us back to school, back to work, safe with law and order, yet he's calling us the overly paranoid ones. Everything that Dewey has just listed is exactly what the Democrats stand for. Higher taxes means you're not getting paid enough. Abolishing the police or defunding the police means it's not going to be safe. Uninformed is CNN propaganda. Uninformed is not letting media or journalists go down to the border because the Biden administration said no media is allowed. That's communism. Uneducated is not giving both sides of the story. That's forcing critical race theory down your children's throats. That's uneducated. A narrative is not educating. Indoctrination is not educating. So, Dewey, you've done a great job listing everything the Democrats stand for. I think Dewey's confused. He needs to go back and kind of maybe get off CNN for a little bit and read a freaking book. Paul says, these are the people that babysat us while our parents worked, taught us nearly everything we know, looked after us when our grades started to drop, and always encouraged us to do better. But then Rupert and his Muppets at Fox News taught their masses how to hate. For what? For news ratings over education ratings? Again, the Democrats have our kids out of school. The Democrats have locked us down, and we've all lost our jobs over it. So, yeah, we might be hating a little bit right now, but I don't think it's because Rupert Murdoch and Fox News. Donovan says, that's rich hearing conservatives complain about politicians taking money than doing what they're told by the people who gave them that money. Sounds similar to how the left complains about money in politics, but you all said money is speech, remember? Conservatives take plenty of money from the rich and corporations. Then what do? Cut taxes for the rich and corporations. Cut regulations for corporations, also they can make more money. But you conservatives only complain about teachers' unions. Go cry me a river. See, the thing is here, we take money too. But when we take money and we make corporate tax cuts that make the rich richer, and I don't even agree with that necessarily. Corporate tax cuts are great for companies because it allows them to grow. It allows them to hire more employees. Watch what happens when Joe Biden raises the capital gains tax to pay for his little bullshit America First, America Fix It Up and infrastructure bill that only 6% actually goes to the infrastructure bill. Watch how these companies get crippled because when you raise taxes on a company, you stunt their growth. They can't grow anymore. They can't, if you're going to give all that money to the government, you can't reinvest that into your business now. If I can't reinvest it into my business, that means I'm not hiring employees. That means we're not growing. That means the economy is not working. So yes, we all take money. Nobody's disputing that. But right now, the Biden administration is taking money from the unions, and it's hurting most of America. We're all suffering because of it, or at least the Democratic states. So I don't really care how much money anybody takes from anybody, as long as it doesn't affect my freaking life. And I don't think unless Donovan has suffered personally from conservatives taking money and then lowering taxes, I don't know how this would have hurt Donovan. But the Biden administration taking taxes from, or taking money from the unions for the unions to then turn around and call the shots and keep my kid out of school is personally hurting me. It's affecting millions of parents nationwide because these parents now can't be at work. And the teachers might say, well, it's not our job to babysit your kids. Yeah, it's not. But it is your job to teach them from 8 to 4 o'clock. I don't care what you call it. They should be in school. And as long as our tax dollars can continue to pay for that education, then we expect them to have a full education. I mean, enough's enough now. It's been like a year and a half. When does it end? And now, finally, we're hearing from superintendents around the country or the state that we expect them to be back full time. I didn't even know if this was a freaking discussion. What do you mean you expect them to be back? I thought it was a gimme. I thought it was a done deal that they would be back. If anything, we're now on to fighting for them to take the damn masks off their face. That's where we're at. So it's almost, I don't think the superintendents, and this is the problem, the superintendents in the school districts and the teachers unions are so out of touch with reality as to how or what the parents want. That's where the breakdown in this whole-diabolical situation lies. Nobody's communicating with the parents. Nobody's talking to the parents. If they at least consulted us, if they at least sat down and had a conversation with us, then I'd be all for that. I'd say, okay, let's at least have a debate over the situation. That's not going on right now. It's everything but that. Board of Education members don't want to have a debate. The teachers' unions don't want to have a debate. The teachers don't even want to have a debate. Well, guess who's going to get the backlash the second these kids go back to school full time? The teachers, because you're going to be forced to have a debate with the parents. It's going to be very easy for the parents to lash out and take it out on you, the teacher, because of what your unions did, because of the frustrations that your unions caused. And you backed them up, remember? So don't go crying to us and tell us that, well, it was the unions, not me. The unions worked for you guys, not the other way around. The unions are supposed to be acting on your behalf. You are the member, which means as a member, you pay your dues to be represented how you want to be represented, not the other way around. So, fine. They held Biden hostage. They're now holding the CDC hostage. But they don't need to hold you hostage. And if you're scared for your job, if that's not why you're not speaking out against the union, well, that's not my problem. And it's definitely not my kid's problem. So the teachers' unions, for those of you who are just joining us, are now recommending guidelines to the CDC. The teachers' unions, who have not been following the science this entire time, who have not cared what the parents want, who have not cared what the governors have wanted, who ignore in the past the CDC guidelines, are now telling the CDC guidelines what rules to put in the new guidelines as we get ready to go back to school full time. And America has had enough. Let's head back to the video and we'll take a look at a little bit more of this video where the White House is now defending the CDC's outreach to the teachers union.
State of reopening right now. I mean, the president says he's reached his target on reopening of having nearly most schools reopened. But is that really the case when you look at who's really in classrooms and for how long?
No, and he has barely reached that goal, and only by fudging the numbers. You know, the Department of Education put out a survey this week, Paul. It was conducted in March, came out this week, and it shows that only 54% of kids under high school, lower than high school, are actually back full-time in the classroom. And if you dig into those numbers, it's even more discouraging because it kind of smooths over enormous regional discrepancies. For instance, in California, only 5% of fourth graders are currently in class. Also huge differences in terms of demographics. A lot more white kids are going to school. Only about a third of black and Hispanic kids are back in the classroom. And this is because of resistance from the teachers' unions. They don't want to go back, and you're seeing the effect already in education and the ability of kids to learn. And so the Biden administration's coddling of this attitude is one reason why those numbers are so depressing.
Jason, we've now seen this going on for at least a year, and it's going to continue for the rest of this school year. And there's really no guarantee either that the schools will be completely open in September in some of these places. Is there going to be any political cost for this from the teachers' union side?
I hope so, Paul. I think one thing that parents have learned and families have learned is just how much power these unions have over the schools and by extension over our lives. You know, the irony here, Paul, is that, you know, the children have held up very well physically against the virus. You know, they're not spreaders, they don't get sick, and so forth. The harm done to children during this pandemic has been mostly by the so-called experts, with the social distancing requirements and the masking requirements and the distance learning requirements and so forth. And that, again, is largely the work of the teachers' unions. And I think Republicans should take this message right into the midterm elections, go into these communities that have been hardest hit, as Kim was just describing, and just tell them this is what union control of public schools can do to upset our lives. We shouldn't have it happen again. You need more choices.
I think that's perfect ending to that video. We need more choices. All we can do is take this message to the 2022 primaries. And that's what we can do. Vote these people out. Whoever the unions have control over, get them out. Biden can't do anything without control of the Senate or the House. He'd be a lame duck president. And that's exactly the situation that we need America back in ASAP. I keep talking about the 2024 election. And everybody's like, dude, why are we talking about why are we even talking about 2024? We won't have an America left by 2024 if we don't do something about the situation right now. And they're right. I mean, look how bad things are just after 1 year, 1.5 years of this pandemic. Look how much control and power the Democrats and the CDC and the teachers' unions now have over this country in just a few months. So if we don't nip this in the bud right now, there isn't going to be much of America left by 2024. And this is why I call the teachers' unions the cancer of America, because they are literally destroying this country. So another spanner in the works that they continue to throw at us is this critical race theory stuff, which I have a huge problem with. And so does pretty much every other Republican state. Because we all know that critical race theory is not education. It's indoctrination. We all know that the liberal left-wing teachers are not going to be teaching both sides. And this is what I have a huge problem with when it comes to critical race theory. It's not that I have a problem with critical race theory in general. I have a problem with teaching my 4-year-old critical race theory, who has no idea how to even think. These are activist issues. I don't think they should be taught even in high school. You want to take a course in college, you want to teach or you want to study ethics or racial ethics or racial theory, then go for it. I don't think it should be taught in grammar school. So this morning I posted to Facebook because it was really driving me nuts after reading through the news and how many Republican governors are actually slamming the door shut on critical race theory. And quite a few of them are. So I posted this morning over on my personal wall. I wrote, "We didn't teach white supremacy in school, so why are we teaching critical race theory?" I mean, these are some serious issues that I think on both sides have a very negative connotation. So we didn't talk about white supremacy. We don't talk about patriotism, although we should. Trump came out with the 1776 Act last year that it was immediately wiped out by Biden. Trump wanted to teach 1776 patriotism in school. Biden shut the door on that within his first week. Signed an executive order that will not be taught in schools. So if you can't teach that in schools, then why can't you teach critical race theory? So I wrote, we didn't teach white supremacy in school, just to make a point. So why are we teaching critical race theory? So I got in a little bit of a debate with is actually a friend of mine. I know this guy. He's not just a follower. He's a friend, and we get into good debates. And I'm going to read you our debate because I think it's worth you guys understanding where I'm coming from here. He wrote, what is critical race theory? I said, all I know is it's not reading, writing, and arithmetic, completely unnecessary in a grade school educational environment. That was my reply. And then he went on. Critical race theory is an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who seek to critically examine the law as it interacts or intersects with issues of race and to challenge mainstream liberal approaches to racial justice. Okay, it's a good answer. To which I replied, not necessary until college. You're right. That's a great answer. I don't think any of it's necessary until college. Take a class on it if you're interested. I didn't know we taught activism in school. At least we didn't when I grew up. You want to start teaching if you want to start teaching patriotism in school, great. Unless both sides are taught equally, CTR can take a hike. You're not teaching one side of the story without the other. And that is my issue. My issue is that we are not entertaining teaching both sides. We're only going to ram left-wing liberal indoctrination down the throats of these children who are then going to go home to their parents, and the parents are going to be like, what the hell are they teaching you? That's not right. Kids are going to say, well, yeah, because Mrs. Trinker told me so. Well, I don't give a shit when Mrs. Trinker told you so. This is not right. I'm telling you right now, this is wrong. And then it's going to cause a family fight. It's going to start dividing children and their parents. I mean, why do we need to go down this route? Why? This is a reason we don't discuss politics in school. So Damien went on to reply, so you don't want to challenge the mainstream liberal approach. Okay, fine, understood. I said, no. You're going to teach both sides or not. You have no argument unless you are willing to do so. Split it 50-50, I'm all in. He asked me what patriotism was. I said, having respect for the country that gives you your rights. That's what patriotism is. Having respect for the country that gives you right. Having respect for law and order. Standing up for the national anthem. Having respect for the Constitution and our founding fathers. This is America, and whether you like it or not, we got to where we are today because of strong work ethic and hustle. Slavery is a part of our history, and that will never go away. But black people weren't the only race enslaved. White people were also slaves too. For thousands of years. Get over yourselves, teach the whole truth as history, or shut up about it. Like I said, it's probably best we leave it out, or you better be ready to discuss the whole deal. I think that's a fair comment. I think that unless we're going to discuss the whole deal, just leave it out. Talk about both sides. So it's very disturbing to me right now that we're about to teach, or at least entertain teaching, one side of the story, the liberal indoctrinated side, which we all know is not reality. Equity is not reality. It's just going to set these kids up for failure. So we do need to be teaching both sides, or just bin the whole thing altogether. This is why teachers don't talk politics. Black Lives Matter is politics. Critical race theory is politics. The whole thing is political. I don't care if it was meant to be or not. It's political. It causes divide. The discussion alone is going to cause divide. And it's going to cause divide at home. Between families. Is this what the schools want to do right now to their families? is this the level of domestic violence that they're okay with? I mean, are they really okay with children coming home, being indoctrinated and brainwashed, and then getting in arguments with their parents? This is what we want our education system to turn into? Because none of this happened when I grew up. It was reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what education was about. But now we just want to keep bringing critical race theory and politics and Black Lives Matter into everything. Well, not in Aspen, Colorado. Aspen School District, they said, we are not teaching this. And a lot of different towns, including liberal California, including liberal New York. In New York City, parents are speaking out against it. In Los Angeles, parents are speaking out against it. They want nothing to do with it. So recently, Aspen High School parents brought a serious problem to my attention, said Ronkin. There's this guy, his name's Ronkin, and he's reporting. Let's pull up the article for you guys to see. So I read this article today, and I thought it was quite interesting. This had to do with Aspen. Aspen School District, we're not teaching critical race theory. So nearest Aspen School District Superintendent David Bond can tell much of it started when Joyce Rankin, a column published about his district. So this journalist goes and she posts this column in the Steamboat Springs Pilot, and today it's called, accused his district of breaking Colorado law. So apparently teaching critical race theory in Colorado is breaking the law. And this columnist called out the superintendent. So she wrote, recently Aspen High School parents brought a serious problem to my attention. Rankin, the wife of Republican Colorado Senator Bob Rankin, wrote, the principal and several teachers formed an equity team. They explained it was to help them address the complex issue of equity. The equity team on which no parents or community stakeholders were included. So nobody was included in this team. No parents, no community stakeholders. Surprise, surprise. So they create this team without asking any parents to be on it. Sounds like they hijacked the situation, not discussed it like mature adults and communities do, which is why we're so pissed off at the unions right now. They keep hijacking everything without including parents into any of the conversation. So the equity team, on which no parents or community stakeholders were included, Rankin laments, developed a survey that included questions of a private, personal nature and made it a required assignment. Class time was allowed for the survey to be completed and submitted. Students were instructed to submit their work anonymously. So now they're asking our children to take these surveys in school that we are not being told about. And they want the kids to remain anonymous. Huge, huge problem. Rankin goes on to contend that because the school ran a survey, even in an anonymous capacity, without first getting parent or guardian permission, the school broke Colorado law. So states need to start fighting this. Civil liberty lawyers need to start fighting this. Are they breaking law by discussing this in school without consulting the parents first? But the outcry then extended beyond Rankin's initial concerns, namely legally and privacy concerns surrounding how personnel information may be used, to allegations that the school district was teaching critical race theory, which seems to examine how race underlies other social infrastructure such as the legal system. So Bo had about 15, maybe 20 parents reach out worried about critical race theory. He found himself even Googling the topic, as it wasn't entirely clear how a few questions about feeling safe in the school environment, regardless of sexual orientation or religious affiliation, on an anonymous survey led to critical race theory. So blah, blah, blah. As it turns out, he and the Aspen School District, for that matter, were not alone. People are pissed off right now across the whole country. School districts are starting to step up against. Across the nation, school district leaders and mostly conservative state legislators are contending without with concern and sometimes angry parents and stakeholders criticizing curricula for including the academic school of thought, even when those districts insisted they aren't teaching it. They might not be officially teaching it, but there certainly is liberal left-wing indoctrination going on here. Behind our backs, by the way. Behind our backs. And it started all when the liberal teachers started slamming Trump in the last 2020 election. They're not allowed to do that. We don't care what the teachers voted for. I don't want my kids knowing what president the teachers voted for. Because you're now going to persuade our children politically. We don't need that being taught or influenced in school. That is a conversation for home. Black Lives Matter is a conversation for home. Just because you might not think the parents are going to handle it the way you want it is neither here or there. It's none of your business. What goes on in home is absolutely none of the school district's business. And what goes on in the classroom when it comes to reading and writing and arithmetic and getting ready for the SATs and getting ready for college, we'll leave that to you, the expert. Because that's what we thought school was supposed to be about. And if you're not going to stand the flag, if you're not going to do the Pledge of Allegiance before school starts, if you're not going to teach kids about our founding fathers and our Constitution and the men who built America, if you're not going to teach them any of that, then you're sure as hell not going to be teaching critical race theory. So yes, this will be a war between the parents and the teachers. And if the teachers want to stay out of it, then fine. Then we'll go to the teachers' unions. Just like state legislators and governors are doing right now across America. Indiana. It's happening in Indiana. It's happening everywhere. In Carmel, Indiana, for instance, a group of parents stirred up a debate in the community after presenting their reasons to the school board why a recently hired diversity, equity, and inclusion officer should be removed. I mean, now we're hiring positions. A diversity, equity, and inclusion officer. This is what we're freaking paying people to do? Indoctrinate now? So good. I'm glad they went up against the school board to have this person removed. Not the person who was hired to fill the role in January this year, but to eliminate the entire position altogether. This week, legislators in both Idaho and Tennessee also banned the teaching of critical race theory. Texas is seemingly not far behind. It's happening all over America. It's not because we don't want to teach equality. It's not because we don't want white kids not treating black kids fairly. That's not what any of this is about. It's because we don't trust that the liberal white teacher, because that is really who's responsible right now for this nonsense, is going to teach it fairly. That is where we are gravely concerned. And we have a reason to not trust them right now. We have every reason, because we know 90% of the teachers in America are liberals. There aren't many conservatives. The conservative voice amongst our education system has been silenced. Renee wrote, CRT is bad news. It is huge division, and it's not necessary in school. I'm reading some of your comments, guys, that you're dropping in on my own feed. Thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. Kristen Adams wrote, in reality, this pandemic has opened my eyes to the brainwashing going on with our children. I would have never considered homeschooling, and now I don't want my 7-year-old going back. Teachers have lost their minds. They have. Look at, God bless Kristi Noem, the first American. I'll get you guys a little bit better of a view here. Kristi Noem is the first candidate to slam, or at least, let me pull up the article of Kristi Noem that we published on You Made It Political this morning. Kristi Noem is the first candidate in America to sign the 1776 pledge to save our schools. When you have governors and American presidential candidates now fighting to save our schools, you know we have a problem. We have a big, big problem. So Kristi Noem signed the 1776 pledge to ban America indoctrination in our schools. Tony wrote on our wall here on the show today, because it's about being controlled. Science was thrown out the window when it came to schools. Example, sitting and eating your fine with no mask. Probably meant lunch. Sitting and reading a book not allowed without a mask. Isn't that insane? That is so freaking insane. That our teachers' unions continue to abandon the science and they want nothing to do with listening to the experts. And now it's so bad that they actually control the experts. They control every aspect of our lives, every single aspect. Today we started the show discussing a big problem. The problem is that the Biden administration is taking dictation from the teachers' unions, as Democrats have long done. That is the problem here. They're not following the science. They're following orders from labor leaders that give lots of money to Democratic politicians and Democratic leaders. And yes, we're not stupid. We know Republicans take money too. But Republicans haven't ruined our lives from the money that they've taken. If anything, they reduce taxes. Yeah, sure. It might make CEOs a little richer. It might make executives richer. But how's that going to impact your life? How's that going to make your life worse? The Democrats have done everything but make our life better. They have destroyed our lives, actually. And it's all been because of the teachers' unions. And this pandemic has shown just how powerful the teachers' unions really are. And if we stand a chance at cutting the cancer, getting rid of the 1950s style mafia that America has now been held hostage to, then we need to cut the cancer out of the fat now, before they completely kill and then destroy this country. We have to stand up to them, because it's not going to go away on its own. We have had to fight and push back and go up against the government, the CDC, the teachers' unions, every single goddamn step of the way to get to where we are today. Lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit has been filed against these districts. If we don't take a stand, people, it's going to completely eat and destroy this country. So we have to continue our fight. Thank you guys so much for joining me here this morning at You Made It Political. We live stream every single day at 10 a.m. to Facebook and YouTube. We'll see you tomorrow, same time.
Thanks for listening to You Made It Political with Matt Clark. Be sure to like, follow, or subscribe to the show, or leave us a review on iTunes. And if you like our show or want to know more, check out YouMadeItPolitical.com.